Okay, so let's get started. So you all hear me, right? So that I can get started.
Yep,
Yeah.
everything's good, thanks.
Okay, cool. So first of all, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So thanks for dedicating your time and joining this call. This is our very first meeting, first of all, exclusively for Cloud Foundry operators. So before I get into the topic, so I would like to take a couple of minutes to introduce ourselves. So I'm Gauri Shankar. I work at SAP mainly as DevOps engineer and on Cloud Foundry platform mainly. And I have more than 7 years of industry IT experience. And also with me, I have Karthik. So Karthik, you can introduce maybe.
Yeah. Hello everyone. I'm Karthik. I'm having around 10 years in IT industry, 10-year experience in the IT industry. I work on the same profile as Gauri. Thank you.
Thanks, Karthik. So we can straight away get into the topic. Just to give you an overview about the Cloud Foundry operators special interest group. So the initial idea was like to have a dedicated group who are highly interested in the something which is the happening, I would say, the how to operate the Cloud Foundry landscape in an efficient way or a better way. And also we wanted to bring all the Cloud Foundry operators across the globe together in a single roof, mainly to discuss and then engage with them on let's say different ideas and then best practices to make it a de facto standard to follow by default by anyone who is operating the Cloud Foundry landscape, Cloud Foundry platform, I would say. Yeah, so with that, also, if you look at the market, so we are seeing more and more adoption of the Cloud Foundry platform as an application development platform. So with which ideally means that there are a lot of responsibility on Cloud Foundry operators to manage and provide first-in-class Cloud Foundry platform for the application developers to develop and deploy and run an application without any issues. Yeah, so this also evident that so we wanted to have such a group first of all to come together and then discuss and then set the standard. And also that I wanted to emphasize one more thing. So why we need such community first of all. So I would like to take one of the, let's say, the problem statement. So what we have also encountered in some point, let's say how to measure the availability of the Cloud Foundry platform. Yeah, so if you look at it, different companies they'll be having a different way of measuring the availability of the Cloud Foundry platform. Yeah, so it might be a right way, they might be considering all the aspects of it, and then some other side, if you look at it, that might be the wrong way. They might not be taking all the aspects of it. So this is the exact reason so why we need such a community first of all to come together and then discuss in and out about the Cloud Foundry operations and then set the standard and make it by default to follow by anyone who is operating the Cloud Foundry platform. With that, maybe let's together work on this and then make this happen big. Yeah, so with that, I'll jump to the agenda. So our agenda looks like this. It's next 1 hour fully packed agenda. So I will start with the purpose of this new community and so what's our mission and then vision statement, and then of course we'll be having our value proposition for this community and how this setup is going to work. And so we have a couple of topics today. Thanks for Andreas and Martin from SAP, and also from Ence and then Bernd from SAP also accepting our proposal and then presenting us here today. And of course, we will close with the closing note. So what's the next step and then all those things. Yeah, so purpose. So if you look at our logo, so we have a symbol over here which ideally resembles, let's say, the engineering excellence. So what it ideally means, so we wanted to apply the engineering excellence on top of Cloud Foundry platform. So how exactly this will happen? So we are going to come together, all the Cloud Foundry operators across the globe, and then we are going to set the standard, and then we are going to apply the engineering excellence, and then we are going to set the de facto the Cloud Foundry platform, the operating. Yeah, so this is the main purpose. So not only that, and we want to evangelize, let's say, the Cloud Foundry platform. We wanted to, let's say, set the unique process to be followed across the globe by experts of several organizations, and exchange the best in class practices. Yeah, so this is what our main purpose of having this new community. And of course, if you take any, let's say, the small scale industries, and then any of the new things, whatever it is happening, so everything will have the mission and the vision statement. So also we do also have the mission and the vision statement. So first of all, for this new community, so mission, so we wanted to first of all bring in the fill factor of, let's say, the Cloud Foundry operations, right from the setup, integration, monitoring, until the feedbacks. So also we'll be having, let's say, the new Slack channel, and then this meeting gonna happen every fourth Wednesday of a month. So we are going to capture all the conversations, so whatever is happening, and then so we wanted to have this as a globally acknowledged standard. So upon the experts acceptance. So with that, so anyone who is starting the Cloud Foundry landscape setup, yeah, so they will come over here, and then they should follow this one as a by default standard. Yeah, so if somebody is starting the Cloud Foundry landscape, Cloud Foundry platform, I would say. And so at least for the vision, it really matters. So because so what we have in mind, also the people who are there in the call also accepts my view. So our vision would be by 2020, so we wanted to achieve, let's say, the inspire new aspirants across all the verticals of the Cloud Foundry space with the global guidelines. Yeah, so that will really help for everybody, and then run the best in class the Cloud Foundry platform. And the value proposition, so the first, as I told you already, so we wanted to bring industry wide experts under the one roof. So with that, actually, we'll be discussing so in and out about the Cloud Foundry platform operations, and then we'll be setting the standard, and then we are going to make it as a by default standard to follow by anyone who is running the Cloud Foundry platform setup. Yeah, and then so we wanted to share the best practices and then guidelines. Let's say somebody starting fresh today, so they will, for them, the go-to place would be the our community, first of all, which we started, let's say, in the GitHub channel, or else we'll be having I mean the Slack channel. So they will come here, and then they'll get all the informations, so that they can get started, and then they'll be setting up the best Cloud Foundry platform. Yeah, and then so we wanted to set up a global consumable framework. So what does it mean here is that, let's say, we wanted to provide all the information so which is relevant for, let's say, the landscape setup, may be it very small scale setup, and then be it a very large scale setup. So for that, so there will be the consumable framework, let's say, be it for the monitoring, and then for the update, and then for other things also. So this actually they can check and consume it actually according to their need. Yeah, this is also one thing actually what's our community value proposition would be. And then so we wanted to publish all the validated protocols which suits the need of an end user. So end user here would be all the Cloud Foundry operators. Yeah, these are the some rules actually we will be valid. So many companies follow so different rules. Yeah, so basically here the conclusion would be, or what we are trying to address here is, we'll take the many rules from different companies, and then we wanted to validate their rules, and then make it as, let's say, make it as the standard, and then we are going to publish as a suitable validated protocol to the end user, all the Cloud Foundry operators. And this is going to be our setup. This is how our setup is going to work. What you see over here is the network and then the standard. So both are going to be our backbone of this community. And with that, we have three pillars. Let's say the one is being the technology, and then another one is the process, and another one is the KPI. Yeah, so this community basically will take up all the challenges and then all the questions related to the technology and then process. Yeah, and then of course KPI is for the community to measure the metrics. Okay, how many people are coming in, and then how many people are getting benefited out of this community, and then how many are contributing this community to achieve let's say achieve the goal of the Cloud Foundry operations easy. Yeah, so all those things. Yeah, so and then when you take technology, so basically here we wanted to give the support of let's say different tools as well. Let's say if somebody is setting up a new landscape or setting up a new Cloud Foundry platform, so basically there will be a lot of tools being used for them. Yeah, so be it for monitoring and then update of that platform, and then all those other things. Yeah, so for that we wanted to give support for the technology also, what they can use it by default, which comes with the by default of all the all the by default things. Yeah, and then of course for the process. Yeah, so we wanted to, let's say, take some of the process, and then we wanted to uh, give them as by default a process to follow, so be it for the monitoring and then update, of course. Yeah, so with that this about this introductions, I just wanted to tell so why first of all we need this community and all those things. With that, actually we come to the topics for the day. Yeah, so maybe I can hand over it to Andreas and Martin. So it's about keeping in landscapes blooming. So maybe Andreas and Martin can take over. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Good morning from Germany. Yeah, this is a presentation from us from actually nearly 2 years ago, when we initially did that at the Cloud Foundry Summit in Basel, and we naturally updated a little bit for today. But actually being quite happy that a lot of the things that we showed at this time are still very valid for us as a team.
Yeah, hey, welcome from my side as well. Martin Schröder speaking here. And yeah, hoping that we could give you some information today on our team setup, how our working mode looks like, and showing a couple of tools, mechanics, how we monitor our landscapes, just to give some food of thought and maybe some input for further discussions, exchange then on the community.
And if we look at Godfrey's introductory slides of the technology stack, would be interesting to see if you at least recognize some of the tools that we use, that you also have them. Otherwise, we already have a lot of discussions on this first pillar in there. Okay, then probably we come to a first introduction of our team. So basically, yeah, as we work for SAP, naturally, a global setup is a normal thing for us. So we are working from 4 locations mainly, and the landscapes we have are now also spread across the globe. So to just give you a rough idea of the size that we talk about for our landscapes. Yeah, and what we want to show or talk about today is actually a little bit of why do we have this landscape pattern in there in all of our presentations too much. A little bit of the working mode. So Godfrey introduced himself and Kartik as DevOps engineers, and I guess DevOps, or we often call it Ops Dev. Wonder why? How we actually live that. Okay, how do we live that collaboration with all the other teams here at SAP? And the third one, yes, really basically the question of the monitoring and tool selection that we have to keep, yeah, somehow our landscapes healthy, but also ourselves healthy in everyday work. Okay. So basically, when you think landscape gardening, people have very different opinions. Some people want to have a garden full of trees and probably vegetables and fruits and so on that you can harvest. Other people want flowers or just a meadow to enjoy the view of the garden. And I guess also for Cloud Foundry, people have very different ideas what to do with such a landscape. Is it just for the sake of technology? Is it for really hosting mission critical applications, making money with that? So what is do you want the latest greatest technology in there, or do you want stable operations? So there are a lot of different goals and aims, ideas that people have for such a landscape. Also for a garden, there are a couple of influences that are somehow outside the gardener's reach. The weather, the snails eating up your fruits and so on. This is something that you cannot always control, but that you have to think about what you do with that. So if you don't think about it at all, then you're going to be hit really badly by such external influences. And I guess being a gardener or being an operator means that you think about what are the risks, what are the things that can happen from the outside, how do I cope with that? So that is, I think, another place where you see this metaphor hopefully working also for yourself. Yeah, and so also a garden should have a couple of results. So either be it the joy of having the garden and the fun of working with the landscape. Since we do that for a couple of years, I think the joy factor is okay. But you also want to harvest something from the garden. So a landscape which is not commercially successful will be a CF landscape that won't exist for a long time. So trying to keep all of these goals in sync is, I guess, one of the basic requirements that we see in running such a landscape.
Okay, I would like to continue with some information on how we work together as a team, how it looks like in our team. Starting with a rough timeline over the last couple of years. So we started with our Cloud Foundry endeavor in 2015. So taking that metaphor again, seeding the Cloud Foundry or seeding the first Cloud Foundry landscape. Over the next couple of months and years, we were growing our Cloud Foundry landscape. From one landscape, it became several Cloud Foundry installations, landscapes. The size of the landscapes was growing. Additional requirements were coming in. For example, requirements regarding certifications, for example, for ISO certificate compliance or for SOC compliance, which again brings actors from outside into the operations aspect on how you run the processes, on how to operate, or how you do changes on a landscape, increasing the complexity for our day-to-day business. And yeah, meanwhile, or over the years, then additional hyperscalers have been added, so that meanwhile SAP Cloud Platform runs on various hyperscaler providers like AWS, Azure, GCP, and others. And yeah, over the recent years, more and more landscapes were popping up over the different countries over the globe to serve customer needs from different countries over the globe. Some more information on the content of our cloud platform. So of course there is Cloud Foundry as such, as a runtime for the applications, but there's more. There's services which can be consumed, used by applications, like PostgreSQL, like a MongoDB, like a RabbitMQ messaging service. So that's not only Cloud Foundry, but other services which are part of the cloud platform, which need to be updated, configured, scaled, and all the other activities you do if you operate a Cloud Foundry platform. We use Concourse for the deployment, for the update of our landscapes. So another technology part of here, which you might use as well. So this is the landscape itself, various technologies inside there. And additionally to that one, or to the landscape itself, we have some central tooling, like a Jenkins, which we use as scheduling tool technology. We use Grafana for visualizing, creating dashboards to show data, to aggregate data. What kind of data, we come to that in a minute. And we have an Elasticsearch next to our Jenkins for the logs of the jobs, as we have a lot of jobs running on Jenkins. Viewing a log of a Jenkins job in Jenkins itself can be done, but if you have many of those, it becomes tedious. So we are using there, again, a well-known logging stack for the log visualization and storing. Maybe just asking in between, are there any questions until now? Should we just avoid rushing through the slides and just to check in between, any questions until now? Okay, then let's continue. As we are doing DevOps, as already mentioned, we have a couple of, let's call it buckets in our team, different topics where we have to balance the capacity of our team. On the one hand side, left-hand side here on the picture, we have to keep all the different landscape systems running, which has the topmost priority. So a Cloud Foundry platform which is not running, which is, I don't know, not updated, which has an issue, is not good for us as SAP, but as well for the customers. So if there's anything to do, this is something we have to do as a backlog in our team. But on the other hand, we not only have the operations task in our team, but we have development, improvement tasks, innovation tasks in our team. For example, automating processes which have been done manually at the beginning, thinking about a new monitor which needs to be set up, or an existing monitor which needs to be improved, doing some proof of concept for, I don't know, there's a new version of Grafana which you would like to consume, so we need to give it a try to see which value a new version of Grafana is giving. So these are the different buckets which we have to balance in our team. That we always try to ensure that we are not doing ops only, that we have some innovation and improvement activities in our team as well, to reduce the operations effort over time. And yeah, the goal on our team is really to kind of have an even balance between those keep the system running and those improvement innovation tasks. At least on the long run, there might be exceptions for one or the other side for a certain week or a month, but overall we try to balance the effort. And if we see that for whatever reason there is an imbalance, that operations effort has increased, for example, because there's a new landscape being set up, or the size of a landscape increases the operations effort, we have to invest into innovation and improvement topics to again reduce the operational effort. Okay, then team setup. Besides the different locations, what we need in our team is, again, a combination of generalistic people, so who know, let's say, a little bit of everything. So, of course, we need to, all team members in our team need to understand what Cloud Foundry is, how Cloud Foundry works, how to use Concourse to trigger a deployment job, how to use Grafana to create a dashboard to visualize data. So we need to know a little bit of everything. But as well, we need, for certain topics, especially for Cloud Foundry, or for other core components, we need as well specialists or specialized know-how to be able to do a deep dive into some, I don't know, issue investigation to find the root cause of an issue. So it's it cannot just be, let's say, experts in one area, but we need to know all the different components as shown on the bill of material slide previously. We always have to balance between things we have to do right now. So if there is an incident on a landscape, we have to start investigating right now. We have to try to fix it as soon as possible to have it up and running again. But again, we have to think about long-term things. So there might be workarounds, shortcuts you do short-term to fix something, but that might increase the technical debt, which either our team or somebody else at SAP would have to cover. So we as well have to think long-term if we do some workarounds or shortcuts to, for example, fix an issue. In the middle, the picture, what we want to tell with that one is our development teams for the different services, they might have ideas from their development team. There might be a new technology in the community being available, a new tool being available, so that besides that short-term, maybe even manual fixing, we get ideas from other teams, which you can then implement or use in our day-to-day operations business.
So one thing that's probably important here as well is that there is also, especially with this, naturally the balance between the certification and the well-being of a landscape, right? That you have fixed procedures, who's allowed to change, to access a landscape, how can you do changes to the landscape, and so on, which you definitely need for a productive landscape, especially if you think about critical customer payload on top of it. At the same time, you need to have this approach that you can get new ideas into the landscapes. A lot of the backlog that Martin showed before with the innovate and improve topic is also about the question, how can you get DevOps really running, or Ops Dev, I should say Ops Dev, on a productive landscape, so that developers have good access to the landscape, but also have the chance to do the things they need to do on the landscape in a proper compliant way. So a lot of this is, I think, part of this collaboration setup we have with the development teams for the live landscapes. And that hopefully leads to the last picture from time to time, that we really have success that we can celebrate together. So it's never a single team who is really fixing something or improving something. It's always a cross effort, and to do this, to do team rotation, to have people from the dev teams working with our team to hand over a landscape, a productive landscape, to development teams to do let's say detailed analysis or so on in there. That is important, and that is, I think, the key to success. And that means also really building the trust between the different teams working towards the success of such a platform.
Okay, next chapter, we would like to show you a couple of ideas and tools which we use to monitor our different landscapes. But before that, coming back to our garden metaphor again, in a garden it might be rather easy to see whether certain plants are healthy or not. Looking at the tomato plant on the left-hand side, it's rather obvious that this one looks healthy. Turning to the right-hand side, this tomato plant, well, it's not even really visible whether this is a tomato at all. But yeah, that doesn't really look healthy. So in the garden, it might be a bit easier. But for a Cloud Foundry landscape, as Andreas already mentioned, yeah, that one of the most critical information for us is the question, is our platform up and running? And with platform, we mean all those different services like Cloud Foundry itself, and which already is a lot of things. So can I push an application? Is my application running? Can I scale an application? Can I log into Cloud Foundry? So already Cloud Foundry itself has a lot of use cases or APIs, endpoints, which need to work, plus all the other components like the backing services, for example, PostgreSQL, which need to work as well. And yeah, one of the main questions is, are all those components up and running and can be used by our customers and users? At the very beginning, we started with a kind of black box monitoring setup. So on the left-hand side, we have our different landscapes running. And we have our Jenkins serving monitoring against those landscapes. So that one single set Jenkins installation is firing scenarios against our landscapes. For example, it tries to push an application to Cloud Foundry. First of all, it has to log on to Cloud Foundry. It tries to push an application. It tries to consume different backing services, binding that to the application, and as one of the last steps, checking whether the application is up and running and can be pinged, accessed from outside. So a lot of activities which I would say a usual developer on top of a Cloud Foundry platform is doing. Pushing a new version of an application, consuming backing services, and after that, checking the application, using it. We have called that monitor the developer scenario, because it simulates usual activities a developer on top of the platform is doing. The thing is done by our Jenkins against each and every of those landscapes. And the success or the failure of that monitoring execution is then later on stored in an InfluxDB. So from our experience, a very nice time series database, which can easily be and greatly be used for those kind of things. So we store the data in InfluxDB and visualize it with Grafana. One of the main patterns behind that setup is the idea that the landscape itself should have a controlled way which people are allowed to access the landscape. Of course, consumers, users can access the landscape because they can authenticate and they have either bought services on the platform or, for example, we from the operations team, we are allowed to access the landscape, but it's controlled. Not everybody can see all the details of the landscape. But the status of a landscape is Cloud Foundry, is a certain service up and running. This is information which everybody should be able to see. The world, here we don't mean the entire world, but it's rather the SAP world. So somebody from program management, somebody from sales, somebody from, I don't know, delivery management, a developer in a development team. Everybody who is interested in that data should be able to see it. Without the need and without the permission to actually access the data in the landscape. Because the landscape has customer data in it. As mentioned, we have those certification requirements, which, for example, require a controlled user access, so that we try to divide which permissions and which group of people can see the monitoring data compared to who is able to access the Cloud Foundry installation itself. And with that one, so we achieved it that the Grafana dashboards are public. Everybody can open them, see them, to see the data, but the access to the landscape itself is restricted. How does that look like in more practical ways? This is a screenshot of one of our Grafana dashboards, which we have. One tile in this dashboard is one landscape. We have anonymized the names a little bit to hide, I don't know, SAP secrets. But yeah, the tile is showing the summary of all the landscapes we had at that point in time. It's not a very recent screenshot, but still valid. So on this overview dashboard, somebody in our team or somebody from program management, some other person in SAP would be able to see how many landscapes do exist and what is the status of the different landscapes. As you could probably guess, green means everything is okay in that landscape. If a tile turns yellow, there is some issue in the landscape. As looking at the top left-hand corner, there's one landscape running on OpenStack, which is called a hotfix landscape. That tile only turned yellow because it's a hotfix landscape. So it's an SAP internal landscape, which we use for validation of product hotfixes. There is no customer on it. So the priority of that issue, which happened in that landscape, would not be that high compared to a live landscape. And of course, different monitors have different priorities. If your app on top of your platform is not running, this is probably very severe. If you can't push an update, might be important as well, depending on your use case. But just to give you an example, that for all the monitors we have, they are testing different endpoints, different use cases. And these ones, again, have different priorities, so that we can distinguish which landscape has higher priority than another one, and which monitor has a higher priority than a different monitor. So yeah, we have, at that point in time when we did that screenshot, so we had 2 landscapes which had an issue, and all the other ones were green. As we mentioned, we have several monitors which we fire against the different landscapes. So this dashboard here gives you an overview. Then somebody in our team, seeing, for example, that this OpenStack hotfix landscape has an issue, that person can click on it, and Grafana would bring you to a more detailed dashboard showing the status of all the individual monitors which we run against the landscape. So from that overview, it's just one click and it gives you the details, which of the monitor is failing. And even more, if the operator would then click on the tile with that ping monitoring app for in trial, if the operator would click on that tile, sorry for that one, he would end up on our Jenkins showing the build log of the monitoring execution. Of course, this click then is kind of reserved for somebody from the operations team who is allowed to see Jenkins and to access Jenkins and to see the build logs, because it might contain critical information. So that this link cannot be used by everybody at SAP. But for the operator who has the permissions, so with 2 clicks, he would see the failure. For example, for the CF login step is failing in the developer scenario, so that would be easily seen in the build log. And all the others can at least see the status of the landscapes and which of the monitors are failing. And hopefully no monitor is failing. So we are using Grafana in InfluxDB to visualize the data and to share it with all the others, which, for example, builds trust with the different teams. If you don't know the status of the landscape, I don't know, you might start asking questions, you might, I don't know, interpret certain things. But if the status of a landscape is always visible, this builds trust between different teams. Before we come to the next example on how which tools we use to operate our landscapes, questions until here?
I did want to ask, this all looks really great, like just a general question, how many say DevOps people do you have, and how many foundations are they maintaining, would be my question. Or landscapes, sorry, how many landscapes?
Landscapes, there's a couple of live, there's a couple of hotfix landscapes. The numbers are varying. You would have to check. Honestly, I'm not sure how many we expose right now to our customers. Sure. As live landscapes should be somewhere at 10, 12, something like this. Okay. And a couple of hotfix landscapes. Sometimes we just add a couple of test landscapes for us in addition. So it's somewhere, we are somewhere around on general at least 20 landscapes that we have. And we operate with the 4 locations in a 5x21 mode. Okay. Depending on summertime settings, it's sometimes also 5x22. Okay. And we are 25 people.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. Thanks for that.
Okay. So different kind of visualization here again with Grafana is the deployment status. So the examples from Martin before were basically showing, okay, how healthy is the landscape. But a different view, also very important, not only for the development teams, but also for the people, let's say, who are interested in new features and so on that they want to consume on top of the landscape, is what is actually deployed on the landscape. And here we use, as you probably remember from the previous slides, the fact that we have Concourse running in all the landscapes, and we use Concourse for the updates of the landscape. And basically, the deployments report the data back into our central influx DB. And with this, we can just see, okay, looking, for example, at the product itself. So is a certain landscape actually on the latest version of our, let's say, Cloud Foundry platform product? If it is not on the latest version of the product, then you see this unmerged commits from the product rel branch. So the landscape needs to be updated. Then we have something that a subset of our deployments is not updated yet. That's normally the fact when the Concourse pipeline is running. So for example, CF is already updated, but the L stack is not updated and so on. So you can see these differences, but sometimes you also see that you have failed deployments, that for whatever reasons, a certain deployment could not be updated. And this is shown there with a red statement, failed deployments or missing deployments, that something is not ideal, and that basically means you have to get active as either naturally us as the operational team who's looking to get the deployments in there, but also if, for example, you as a development team want to know, okay, how are things going for my component, you could take a look here. And again, if you think about it, this is right now just showing, let's say, an older screenshot with 10 tiles. But already thinking going into each Concourse UI, logging in and so on and checking is everything green. This is a much faster view because basically most of the time it's a quiet picture, right? There's nothing there. They're just like the typical tiles, all black with a little bit of white text on top of it, and only the occasional, we of course took like a more active screenshot here. You have the occasional messages that there's something to be done. So if you see a landscape where you see, okay, there's yellow or even red information on it, you again click on the tile and then you come to the details, and then you would really see, okay, what is the status of my individual deployments. You see here we have, I guess that's specific to the way how we update Cloud Foundry landscapes. We have a whole bunch of things that we put together into one product pointer, so to say, and we see on top that this landscape is not consuming right now for hotfixes that were available within the product. So this is something we have to update the whole landscape itself. And then we see that basically everything looks pretty nicely the same status. It is just that one of the components in the object store service could not be updated properly. So that is a typical drill down. Again, this is where it ends for the people without further permissions. But this is already sufficient, right? If you would be a stakeholder, you could contact the object store service team. If you're an operator, you know where to look into. If you're the development team, you know how to look into. And basically, both the operational people and the development people have access to the landscape to do the further checks. But these checks, as Martin said, you do within the landscape. You don't want to see that on some aggregated view there anymore, because this is technical details that the consumers of the landscape would probably not be really interested in at that point in time. Okay, and these were the examples of things we already had at this time. So there are always more plans for aggregating data and automating things. So one example here, for example, Martin said that we do a lot of the developer scenario that Martin explained. That's a typical black box monitoring, but there's lots of data, of course, also available white box by just looking into the actual data from the produced by the components within the landscape itself. So the concourse status of the deployment is probably already one good example that we showed before, where we just say, okay, the deployment status, you can really, you don't need to do any checks from the outside. Concourse itself, while deploying, is providing us with this information. But here you can, again, aggregate even further. So this is a newer view on the actual deployment status. So before that, we saw that for a single landscape, the drill down now, let's say, I'm not even sure how old the boom table plugin is for Grafana, but that one is a great help to build this kind of UIs.
Yeah. Sorry, again, similar to our monitoring overview dashboard. It doesn't show you the full list of landscapes, but that would be an aggregated view of all the. So we have one pipeline in Concourse, which we use to update a landscape, and we have that landscape n times because we have n landscapes, and as Concourse is part of the landscape itself. So if one would like to know the status of, I don't know, let's say 15 Concourse pipelines. Or 15 landscapes. You could, of course, open all the different individual UIs in Concourse and check the status. But this dashboard here gives you an aggregation again. On the rows in that table, you see the different jobs of the pipeline, which are doing the different deploy steps of the different components. And in the columns, you see again the different landscapes. And similar to the monitoring, hopefully everything is green and we as an operator have a relaxed day. If not, one cell here in the table might turn red. And then again, similar to monitoring, if you click on that cell, you end up on the right-hand side, you end up in Concourse in the landscape. Again, the same approach. The summary, the aggregation is accessible by everybody in SAP. If you then would like to follow the link to the actual Concourse installation and you would like to see the log, which might contain secrets, you never know. This then, of course, is reserved to a limited set of people, mainly in our operations team, but as well for the development team owning a certain service, so that they can see the log file, investigate why it is failing, and, for example, re-trigger the deployment after fixing the issue. Okay, that's basically what we have collected for today, to give you some insights in how we work as a team, how is our setup, and which tools, technologies we use. Our hope would be that in this Sea of Operators community, as presented by Gobri at the very beginning, we can exchange on how you operate your Cloud Foundry installations, which tools you use, which challenges you face. And hopefully gain some more insights, get some ideas on new things in the community which can ease the job of us as operators. So that's basically from our presentation. Any questions?
I just want to thank you so much, like just the way that you're using Grafana and clicking through to the Concourse pipelines. That's very elegant. That's very well done. I was actually very impressed with that. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for the feedback.
Thanks, Andres and Martin. So if there are no further questions, maybe we can go into the next thing.
Okay, so everyone, I can see that we are running out of time, just 5 more minutes. So we are planning to have this second topic discussed in the next meet. So Gauri, can you just move to the next slide? So we'll go to the closing notes. So this is about the closing notes as well as the next steps for the meeting. The first one, we have created a Google document, Google Docs, which all of you have access. So in this document, we are maintaining the agenda for the next meet, as well as if you want to propose any topic, like you want to discuss, you want to share with everyone in this meeting, you can add your topic in this document. It will be available in next 2 days. So all of you can edit this one. And there's a Slack channel for dedicated for safe operators. So if you have any questions in between, you don't have to wait for the meeting. You can directly post a question. We'll make sure that we'll get you the answer as quick as possible. And if anyone of you will not be able to attend the meeting in future, always you can go back to this YouTube channel. This channel will be uploaded. The sessions what we are having will be recorded as well as will be uploaded to this YouTube channel. And the created link for the safe operators, we'll create a GitHub page where we'll create a GitHub wiki document for the best practices what we have, as well as all of you will have access to this one. So if you want to share your best practice what you follow or any tools that you want to talk about, the one which you use for the Cloud Foundry operations, you can create a wiki and you can post it in this GitHub page. This will also be available in before the next meeting. And so for the feedback, we just created one survey link. Please, after the meeting, just post your feedback here. I just put it in the chat window. Post your feedback. So this will help us to improve, as well as in the next meet, if there is anything else that we have to improve from our side. So this feedback would really help us. And last one thing, please do share this information about this community to your colleagues, to your team member. So we are just expecting some more topics from all of you. If you're able to come up with some new topics, so that would be really nice to go forward in future. And that's all from my side. Gauri, anything you want to add?
No, nothing really.
Okay, so thank you everyone. See you all in the next meet. We'll send out a mail about the Google Docs and the GitHub link, as well as the YouTube channel. So thank you everyone.
Cheers. Thank you
Thanks
so
a
much.
lot, guys, for organizing this. Organizing this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.